What's up guys, DH here and welcome back to wonderful Waihi. We're getting pretty built out with the city at this point and there's a lot going on. It's pretty cool to watch. Thanks to last week's episode, we've also now got some pretty cool and really unique areas. In today's episode, we're going to take that principle and hit the accelerator basically. We are going to start building the downtown and it's going to be one of the best towns, if not the best downtown I've ever built. So let's get going. Working with heights in City Skylines 1 is a little bit tedious. It takes a lot of work, especially if you're looking for a high level of detail, which of course we are, but it's also super rewarding. Now, I'm no stranger to working with height differences, but I've never done a downtown, aside from San Francisco, that was really on any type of slope. And it would be fair to say that in San Francisco, Market Street is definitely not perfectly level, but it's not as extreme as say a Lombard Street or that area of San Francisco, which is just outside the downtown really. So my thinking is, what would it be like if downtown was on those really extreme slopes like where Lombard Street is? Would it even really make sense to have a city build out on such extreme terrain? I really did and ah about it for quite a while, but in the end I kind of thought, you know what? Stuff that, I'm gonna do it anyway because it's interesting and I've never done it before, and God, this game just keeps on giving and giving and giving. As soon as you've got a new idea, you can literally bring it to life with this game. I love that about it. So let's talk about how I'm gonna do this, the idea around it. Well, I want to work a block at a time. So we're going to completely finish each block as we go. That's fully detailed and everything. I guess each little block will be its own diorama. Number 2, I want to have all of the public transport super integrated. That includes trains, metro, cargo trains, cargo ships, all of that sort of stuff. Now you guys know I'm not a train guy, but at this point I don't really care if it's that realistic or not. I just want to make something that's cool. For me, the best thing about City Skylines 1 is when we really get our public transport right, when we really nail it, nobody's driving around. Like, the game has proper mechanics where you get the public transport right. People don't need to drive in your city. If you've got it super efficient, maybe you've made it free for them with different policies, there's real meaning behind all of it. So the main aim with all of this is to get it super efficient, basically. So we're going to put a metro in here. There's going to be a small section here that comes into a station that is above ground, but the rest of it, or most of it at this point, is going to be just a normal subway. This is going to sit pretty much directly across the road from the main train station in downtown, and as you can see, the train station's pretty no frills, which might surprise you, but that's kind of what I'm going for here. That's going to be modelled off the Auckland train station that's closest to downtown, and there's nothing really special about it. I really like the idea of not everything being grand and super amazing. Sometimes it's just got to do the job. Speaking of doing the job, getting all of these surfaces and stairs in here is pretty vital. It's going to look like pretty much a couple of tiered plazas. These stairs are also going to function in game. We're going to have invisible pedestrian paths going up these, linking different parts of downtown so that people can walk efficiently and quickly to exactly where they need to go. These sorts of areas are just so much better when you've got them animated with pedestrians within game. So that, of course, is another aim of our downtown, is we're going to have it super functional and super alive. Every little alleyway that you look down, I want people walking down and going to different places. I'd like to try and make extreme terrain changes look really natural, sort of thing. And that's the idea behind sort of doing it block by block. I mean, you guys might disagree, but for me, if I don't finish it block by block, then my brain sort of moves on to the next block and I run out of ideas when I go back. Some of my best ideas are actually like the second or third one, and you guys might not pick that up from watching the video obviously, but you know, there's a lot of trial and error behind everything. I'd actually really be interested to know how inspiration comes to you guys, because for me, like, it doesn't really come when I'm playing the game. It often comes when I'm out doing other stuff, really. But there's also times where I sort of force myself to, you know, go on Google Earth or do some research and just try and find some inspiration somewhere. It might be a photo, it might be a recent trip you've had overseas somewhere, it could be anything. And I love that when you get that spark, whatever it might be, this is just like a brand new game. It really is, like, it's amazing. Did any of you guys catch that sweet DLC for City Skylines 2? I can now make my non-existent beach within game look really sweet. For the life of me, I don't understand how a beach DLC cannot include an actual beach or any beach props. And the 4 palm trees, I mean, there's so much missing from the base game here that it just sets a precedent here that's pretty clear to see. The things that we are going to really require to build the types of cities that we want to in City Skylines 2, I think we're going to have to pay for a lot of it with a DLC. I could be wrong, call me crazy. And if I was to be completely honest with you guys, I don't really know anything about this sort of stuff. I'm not a computer dude, I'm not a gaming dude. I'm just a dude who likes playing City Skylines. I don't really understand properly any of this. But from where I'm sitting, I'm gonna have to fork out a lot of money to get things like palm trees, and nah, I'm not gonna do it. I really don't think I could afford to do it. And what good is 4 palm trees in my city that doesn't work properly anyway? Nothing I seem to do in that game just makes any difference at all. It's really super Buzz Killington, and the only good thing that I can see that comes out of it is it fills me full of new inspiration to go back and play the predecessor basically. But I don't know, I mean, am I too harsh? Am I too harsh there? I am just trying to speak the truth here. I know that my style tends to be quite extreme with the way I play these games, but I'm not expecting that out of City Skylines 2 straight away. Like, I don't expect to be putting graffiti up on buildings from day one. I know these sorts of unique things get added over time. But right now there isn't even a way for anybody to make anything for the game, even if they wanted to. And the longer that carries on, the more reliant we're going to be on DLC to get the things that we want. A pig wearing lipstick comes to mind. But I digress. I've got some sweet palm trees in City Skylines 1 and I can actually make a beach. I've used the terrain tool to raise up the land a little bit more in this area, and then we're going to lay down a grid pattern with the roads. I want the grid pattern to be pretty square and pretty gritty right where we're going to have the majority of the downtown, but I certainly don't want it to be perfect everywhere. So on the fringes, on the edges, we're going to have some weird angles and things like that. And there was a lot of trial and error here with the roading. I didn't want it too steep, but I wanted some roads to be, bordering on being pretty extreme. So I was using a combination of Move It with the roads and the terrain tool to just soften off the terrain when I got those roads where I thought was a good spot. One road in particular I've put in on purpose that's going to go directly from the port area straight up through the middle of downtown, and this is going to be a tram line. That's a bit of an ode to San Francisco. So I know I mentioned earlier that I wanted to work a block at a time, but in regards to the road, it's pretty important that I get all of these in. So we're going to have maybe 3/4 of the roading done, and naturally that creates the little wee blocks that will fill in as we go. So as you can see, it's pretty bloody steep. I can see why it's so tempting to do a flat city like Los Angeles or something, but I'm not afraid of a little bit of extra work. I know what's coming here. So I'm pretty happy with where they're at. I know I'm going to jiggle them around a little wee bit, but we're going to start putting some buildings down now, and we're going to start with the real big boys. Let's put some skyscrapers up. Now admittedly, I change a lot of these in the end for similar models, or I should say similar sized models, but different models. That's a lot of models, but anyway, I wanted more sort of Art Deco style or traditional style buildings within this area of the downtown. And the ones that you see me put in are just massive glass sort of modern style buildings, or they don't really have a lot of detail. But not all of them, some of them are really nice. I've got the models looking a tad too bright in my game. I'm not sure if that's me or the asset, but the facades on the buildings, the textures on the roofs and things like that is really well done, and they're nice. They add a level of character to a city that's pretty vital, I think, if you want to make it look realistic. And I guess if you got good at placing them down, you could create really old areas of your downtown. Maybe these are around sort of Catholic areas like churches or town squares. I mean, that would be cool. That's a level of city building I'm not at yet, but hey, we've all got to aim for something. So as I'm doing this area, I don't really have any picture in mind at this point. I just want to get these buildings in. As I place them in one by one, I sort of loosely vision in my head what it's going to look like around it. So this one might have stairs facing off on a 45 degree, it might have a big retaining wall, that little wee spot there might be good for a prop door, you know, all of those sorts of things. But a lot of it is really just made up as we go. I mean, I don't know how on earth anybody could sort of picture a whole block like this in their head and then build it exactly like that. I find it much easier, and more importantly, it's way more enjoyable just to sort of do it organically. Just let it all come together naturally. Sometimes when I'm putting a building down, I don't have any idea at all, and that's good and bad. It can either be the worst area, something I change in future, or it could be the blank canvas for something really cool. I think it's important to leave space for creativity, a room for new ideas to flourish. Of course, that also means that we risk the entire city looking like a pile of shit. Well, that's a risk I'm willing to take. And besides, I can only picture things to a certain point anyway, so I can't go beyond my limits. But man, I have to say, there's something really special about being fully immersed in an idea. I believe that creation is really the seat of humanity. Ooh, what'd you think of that one? That was pretty deep. Having any sort of vision and bringing it to life can feel pretty amazing. I would predict that there's probably also levels within that, but for me, City Skylines ticks a lot of boxes. And it actually reminds me of a time when I was younger, when one of my best friends who lived across the road, his father had the most amazing model train set in their shed that you've ever seen. I got booted up the arse more than once for touching things I shouldn't have, but my god, that thing was so cool. And City Skylines is sort of like the virtual version of that, I guess. I've always pictured those model train guys being really good at games like City Skylines, and I don't know, that just might be my sort of perspective, but it's all sort of feeding that creative drive. I think the reason why I like working with height differences in particular is because we're taking something with so much potential to be chaotic and making it orderly. My thinking in this regard also is that if I can just bring, or rather focus on making these buildings accessible from the road, even with these like varying height differences, I might actually cut down on props. I know that doesn't sound right, but I'm a real sucker for putting props down that sometimes are quite needless, and if I'm just focusing on things like stairs and planners and retaining walls and maybe the odd prop here and there, then I'm actually going to cut down quite a bit, and that makes a difference with the performance of the game. I am going to save some pretty hardcore detailing for certain areas, like around train stations, the metro station we built before for instance, but I basically just want to keep things simple for most of it. I'm going to use a pretty cool looking abandoned building that I found on the workshop to hide a pedestrian path here. We've got our functional car park in this area and I want it to be really efficient for the people that are using it, so I'm going to run a raised pedestrian path that they can use that's going to come over this way. It's going to look like it's entering in through some buildings and then will pop out on the roadside. This is something that you're going to see me use quite often in the city to try and animate all the little wee alleyways and stuff all over the place. I'd love to have some sort of little wee hidden cafe like pedestrian only streets that are really narrow, that pedestrians are using within game. Maybe there's even real little cafes and stuff. I reckon this would be a cool way to like create a culture within your city, you know, sort of like Melbourne. That's sort of got that real cool hipster sort of a culture to it. I'm also going to try my hand at doing more custom buildings in this series as well. So the ones you see me putting down here are just little wee sheds. Maybe these are spaces that can be rented out. It could be for self-storage, or it might be for a small or medium business. But I'm also thinking I might try my hand at building like a larger custom building, like maybe even a really tall skyscraper in town or something, and build it out of glass and have the whole thing animated so we can actually see the people moving from floor to floor. I reckon that'd be pretty cool actually. It would also be incredibly difficult, especially the higher we get. So I'm still not sure of that one, but it's an idea I've had for, well, years at this point. But I am more than happy to keep it simple for now. So as I start to put in the last sort of buildings to fill out the block, we get down here next to the metro station, and I'm kind of picturing maybe the metro station has expanded over the years, and this poor building that was zoned right here has just been abandoned now. Maybe it had a large yard out the back that's been cut in half because of the new tracks expanding, or maybe it's solely because the location wasn't appropriate for the business running out of it and they just can't sell the land now. But for whatever reason, we're going to make this look really derelict. I think it would be cool to actually have these types of properties transition into being for sale later in the series, and then maybe they're sold off towards the end of the series and turned into large new buildings and repurposed. In any case, it's going to stay an unkept pile of crap for now. And if anything, it sort of adds an interesting area to what's eventually going to be a really high traffic area. I'll finish it off with some really nice trees that are probably going to be more in the metro station zone. Then we're just going to carry on up the road. The next area that I work on is a perfect example of having absolutely no idea and just chucking down whatever, and in this case it doesn't turn out very good at all. I'm definitely going to come back and change this area. I think what happened here was I didn't really have any purpose for the area, so when that happens I tend to just chuck whatever down that looks good, and very rarely does that work out. I mean, the area's pretty tidy and the props look nice and stuff, but it's really just a nothing area. We'll definitely come back to this, but that's pretty much the last large space that we have to fill. The rest of it's just making these buildings fit with the height difference basically. And the idea with that is we're just going to make it look like the bottom few stories are rented out for a commercial space. So we're going to have lots of stairs and retaining walls, and we're also going to use pedestrian paths to get people actually walking up these areas and going into the shops and stuff. I love the idea of that, as you guys know, and it takes a lot more work, but I just think it's going to be cool to see people walking up little narrow stairs. So we've got our first block in the CBD done, and it's a pretty important one as well. We've got all of that public transport ready. We've got other blocks ready to go so we can service some commercial demand. In the next episode, we're going to start setting up the main port area because I want an area to sort that industrial demand because we've got a lot of it at the moment. I'm excited about building the rest of the CBD, especially with all the slopes and stuff. I think it's going to be quite interesting. And just quickly, in the cinematics here, you're going to see some of these buildings change as well to more of those Art Deco style ones like we spoke about. And man, I've got to say the difference that makes is huge. I love it. I love the extra character. A big thank you to all of you legends out there that are still watching this content. A thumbs up would be fantastic if you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're not subscribed, maybe you could consider that. That would be great. Have a great weekend, guys. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you on the next episode. Later.